is done, we will go ahead and announce what we can. Now, more than likely, there's not going to be a lot of information we'll be able to release because it's going to be a personnel document.
Sounds like a revolving door, officer.
No, it really isn't. It really isn't. So, with that said, I hire high-quality police officers. Now, one thing that I'm not sure if you're aware of, after Officer Maloney was involved in that shooting, he was subsequently awarded a life-saving award and was promoted to sergeant in San Francisco after that incident. And he was cleared by the district attorney's office. So I will go ahead and just leave it at that, and I will let the remaining investigation play itself out. Did you have a question, sir?
No, I was just going to respond that he was cleared by the district attorney's office, and it was a new district attorney.
Oh, I'm sorry, Deb, and then I did see you, and then...
I just wanted to ask about body cameras. Can you talk about that?
Yes.
You guys are what's happening.
Yes.
Whose story is what?
Absolutely. Body cameras is something that the police department has been looking for a number of years, even prior to me becoming the police chief. And the policymakers, which is our council at the time, because it would cost additional funding for us to have body cameras, they, in a couple of occasions, have chosen not to fund the body cameras, but instead put that money toward hiring additional police officers because our staffing was so low that they said, okay, we can use this money for body cameras or we can use this money to hire more police officers. And at the time, they chose more police officers. Now, in today's environment where accountability and transparency is becoming more desired and requested by the communities, I think that it is something that our council would be more apt to consider. I can tell you that the vast majority of police officers that we have recently hired were laterals from other police departments who came from agencies who had body cameras. And so to them, it was actually something different to come to Antioch and not have a body camera. I don't think there's anyone in our police department who's averse to having a body camera. I'm certainly not. I look forward to us being able to get those and being able to utilize those pieces of equipment to help in that area. Yes, ma'am.
Basically you touched on a little bit about the, I just want to kind of address the many officers that I've been seeing when it comes to like the encampment sweeps that you guys have in the city.
I'm sorry?
The encampment sweeps that you guys have in the city. I don't know if some of you know, a lot of, there were at least 11 officers at one of these encampment sweeps when they were interacting with our homeless community. So my question is, I'm trying to figure out, crime and public safety is important to the community. I keep hearing that all over the place. I think everybody thinks that that is definitely true, something that is true and we need to focus on. So I'm trying to figure out how we can prevent a lot of these officers from wasting their time being at encampment sweeps when there is no crime. Do you think that we should have, mental health professionals, substance abuse professionals out here dealing with our homeless community? And if we did have that, that would definitely take some of the, officers away from those type of situations to where they can actually go out there and focus specifically on crime. I just want to know what your take is on that.
Great question. So a couple things at play. Generally, homeless encampment sweeps are not necessarily a product of the police department. We actually assist code enforcement with the homeless encampment sweeps. Those sweeps have occurred, those homeless encampment sweeps have occurred for years. Okay, and in the past, we did not have that many resources out there. But in recent times, with possible protesters or possible people trying to get involved in preventing the action from happening, if we received information that there could be additional people outside of just the homeless encampment who might cause problems and interfere with our abilities to abate the encampment, then we send the additional officers. So that's the only reason for that. As far as mental health practitioners or homeless outreach people, those people already exist through the core team and through our MET team, the mental health evaluation team.
No, it's not. You can't even see them.
I wanted to hear what...
I didn't say through Antioch, but they exist here in Contra Costa County. We get those services through the county. There is a county core team. I know you're familiar with them, and I assume you're familiar with the mental health evaluation team as well. So those are resources that we currently have to pull from that we've offered to the homeless community as well. And some people take advantage of those services and some do not.
Just one, can I keep in just a little bit on that?
Sure.
So a lot of the interactions that I've seen, and not just this one incident where there were just all, you know, many officers, but I've noticed that, and I know you have the Summers and Linderman out there interacting with our homeless
Our community engagement team.
Thank you for reminding me of the name of it. Have been, but I've also seen just other officers interacting with it. I'm trying to figure out what is the training that these officers have when it comes to mental health professionals. I mean, I'm not seeing the core teams at every encampment suite. I mean, I don't even think the core team was there when the 11 officers were there. So I'm just trying to figure out what training do the officers when they go out there and interact with our homeless community. What kind of mental health training, or do they have any mental health training or
They do. They
substance
get
abuse
advanced
training?
officer training, and the core team had gone out to that encampment the day before. Actually, I think a couple days before. Is also
Thanks.
KP, were you there that day?
What was that? Is that Lenderman?
No.
Of course I don't have Lenderman. We can fucking talk to people without throwing a fit.
I don't think they provided any like mental health services. And last time I went, they had like toiletries, hygiene products, things like that. But no one actually offering people, or I mean, my concern I think is because when you go out there and you don't have the knowledge, then you kind of handle those individuals in a way that I think sometimes can be considered inhumane and not necessarily.
And to that, I would respond that that if you talk about that particular incident, there was no use of force used at that incident, and officers didn't treat anybody inhumanely for that.
Yeah,
and
I
would
don't see
encourage
why they
you
were there.
To
Yeah.
contact the court team and ask them, because I'm not going to speak on their behalf, but I would venture to guess that the resources that you're saying weren't offered probably were, because that's typically part of what they do. Mark.
I have a question. Twofold. I know you're a small department. First of all, you're not at the competition. What are the numbers that you need? Number one is, because I know you need large numbers to run through the completion. And then what are some of the avenues that the city can do in order to get your officers to the next level?
Well, and we kind of
I
talked
know,
about
but
it.
I don't know if they know.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about it, Mark, before you got here. Right now, we're sitting at 118 police officers, which is significantly better than 78 we used to have. I've been asked a couple of different ways. One, what would be a good number of police officers that I think Antioch could use? If I'm talking reasonably, with some economic growth that I think is manageable in the near future, I think Antioch would benefit from having anywhere between 135, 140 officers, 130 to 140 officers. I think would be a really good start. I was also asked, if money was no object, how many police officers would I want? And our city's general plan states that a good metric would be 1.5 officers per thousand. And if you look at it from that perspective, we'd be looking around 175 to 180 police officers. Now, folks, if I had 180 police officers, let me tell you, this city would look a lot different. I have been spoken to by chiefs of cities of similar size who have more police officers on their force, and they've asked me how we're able to accomplish the things that we do, such as, Mark, I'm not sure if you were here, we are currently in our 8th straight year of Part 1 crime reduction here in Antioch. And so other chiefs have said that their city managers have asked them, hey, how come Antioch's able to do it with so few officers? I will say, in large part, it's not just the men and women that you see back here. It's a group effort. It's a community effort. I mean, because we really rely on our community, especially to be the eyes and ears for us, because we can't be everywhere. And with fewer officers, we're more in a reactionary mode. With more officers, we can work better and in further ways to work collaboratively with the community to prevent crime from happening in the first place. Because I would believe a crime prevented beats a crime solved.
So right now you're going to need more community input in working side by side until you can get those numbers down.
And even when we get those numbers up, we're still going to want the relationship with the community. We've already talked about that and how important the engagement and the relationship is between the community we serve and the police officers. Absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
Is there a way that you can partner up with sister police to mobile in Antioch? I mean, they kids need more help.
You know what? We do that on occasion, and we've done that most recently in traffic-related stuff. So one of the biggest complaints that I would receive when I first became the chief back in 2017, the biggest complaint that I received throughout the 3.5 years that I've been the chief has been traffic. People have complained. Is anyone going to disagree with me that traffic is an issue?
No, it's an issue. It's speeding.
If you can put some officers right between Longtree and Blue Rock, I kid you not. I have an
Let me tell you
idea.
what's happened. So,
I'm sorry, you were talking and
when
you
our
were having
staffing
a
went down, and we were down to 78 police
I was
officers,
coming to get my check.
we eliminated all of our specialty assignments. So, and traffic was one of them. They had to be absorbed into the regular patrol teams because we just needed to meet minimum staffing levels for our community safety and for our officer safety. We have since rebuilt that program. We now have 4 full-time officers and a traffic sergeant who are out there doing as much work as possible. And I will tell you what I'm proud of as far as they're concerned. A couple things. One, they just received 2 grants from the Office of Traffic Safety that is going to allow us to do more proactive traffic enforcement efforts, as well as buy additional equipment for our traffic unit. The second is the sergeant who took over the traffic unit devised a new traffic page on our police department's website. And on that page, you can actually submit, Deb, pay attention to this part, you can actually submit requests on where you would like to see traffic enforcement. And you will receive a call back or contact, whether it's an email or a phone number, depending upon how you want it to be contacted. You will actually be contacted by the traffic officer who is going to be responsible for that to get additional information and then follow up after the fact. And then recently we've been doing something, and it's on Tuesdays. I think it's what do they call it? Traffic Tuesday, in which on Facebook, we were actually taking live requests from people on Facebook, asking where they wanted us to go out and do traffic enforcement. And our officers were going out there right then.
It was cool.
And responding to that. Did you see that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Very good.
So I will tell you that the traffic unit is out there. And I think it's important to our community because if you're not involved in high-risk activities, which may make you prone to other types of crimes, just driving down the street, every single one of us is impacted by other people's driving. And so our goal is to make our streets as safe as possible for our residents. And so you will see that interactive process through the Traffic Tuesdays. And then if you have a complaint, a traffic complaint in any particular area, please go to our police department website, go to the traffic page, fill out that information, and let the officers know as much information as possible so that they could go out there and address that concern for you. Pat, and then...
T, at one point, well, we know what's going on in Hillcrest. We've had, 1, 2, 3 deaths out there. Numerous accidents related to speed. I mean, if you go out there and you look at the skid marks that go all the way through the median, across the other side, take a tree out, and so on and so forth. And I understand at one point that the police department wasn't doing anything because traffic, they had to have traffic count and also a speed survey before they could do anything out there. We know that Hillcrest is an issue. We've been on Hillcrest traveling side by side, and somebody passed us in the bike lane to go around us and disappear, go through stoplights. Hillcrest is terrible. I mean, we've had enough incidents out there, and you talked about a grant, and I know what you've done on A Street, and it's made Lone Tree, A Street, where you've used Brentwood, PD, the CFP, and so on and so forth.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Those have been very, very successful. And I'm wondering why or if we can look at that on Hillcrest, because Hillcrest, it's for those who have been around long enough, do you remember the term Blood Alley? That used to be, well, yeah, the older residents going over Willow Pass used to neck down to 2. Hillcrest is terrible. I mean, it is one of the worst. Davison, Deer Valley is another one that's close. But Hillcrest, Lone Tree, you could sit out there at In and Out and listen to speed contests, exhibition of speed, all day
James
long.
Donovan.
So let me ask you a question, Pat.
Donovan.
Did you have you filled out that form on our website yet?
I don't have Facebook anymore.
No. It's
No.
just on our PD website.
No, I have not.
Okay, so do that and then talk to a traffic officer and let them know. But what I was going to say to answer your question was, because traffic was such a big complaint for us, we regularly partnered with Pittsburgh, Brentwood, Oakley, CHP, and we would do joint traffic enforcement efforts. We would spend half a day in one location and half a day in the other. We would also partner up with them when it came to sideshows. When we would get information that there was a potential sideshow coming into town.
Some of the property, some of the area, they're not only that, there was an instance where I went to Mama.
Hold on. Sit down.
There were a couple of kids driving.
Which is why we beefed up our traffic unit. Right now, again, we have 4 is full-time traffic officers, and then we will continue to do the proactive enforcements, especially utilizing the OTS grant that will help us do even more. You got a question?
This won't be too hard. It's for you, and I want to. It's like a yes or no question. I want to know if you are personally aware of the two studies that found that at least 40% of police families experience domestic violence, and that's what's reported. So 40% experience that, and then I want to also know if you know or are aware of.
Excuse me, someone's talking.
That found that Black people in Antioch were 2.4 times more likely to have deadly force used on them than white people. I believe it wasn't found in 2018. I want to know if you're aware of those 2 studies. Yes or no?
The first one, I am not, but I assume that that's talking on a national level.
Sure.
I'm asking you.
Yes.
Because you're familiar with the study, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a national level. So I'm not aware of that study. The second one, I believe, you're quoting the Campaign Zero stats, and I'm aware of that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
My question is talking about testing the
Hold on.
proactive control where you would have something like
We do. So the ones that you're talking about, that's called VSET, and we actually work with agencies throughout the county, and we rotate from one city to another. And Antioch generally in a year gets 2 months in which those efforts are taking place.
I have a hypothetical question for you.
Okay.
If an Antioch police officer were to respond and let's say I was backed up against a building in a crouched position with a knife in my hand, would the training that an Antioch police officer received tell them to use less lethal rounds, meaning beanbag rounds, at me while I was in that crouched position to make me drop my weapon?
Possibly. No, it's not. Because when you're dealing with people and the use of force, there's a number of different factors. And so to just answer that in that general sense. Now, I will say this, and actually, Lacey, I would love for you to take part in this. You and I had a conversation not too long ago. Nicole, I'll get right to you. We just received recently a training simulator in which can place the person in the simulator in use of force scenarios, split-second decisions of deadly use of force, de-escalation, and different types of scenarios in which you can interact with the computer, and everything that you do is tracked and monitored by the computer. Are you willing to take part in that training with us?
I think that you suggesting that to people questioning the actions of your officers is, I think it's really condescending because we are not trained police officers. We're not trained in...
Hold on. That's not right. That's not right, though. Interacting.
Or
You guys don't want an
if you're experiencing those
interruption,
situations,
don't
so my
interrupt.
question
I
to
think
you
that's
is,
wrong.
would you be willing to take part in a simulated digital environment scenario in which nobody would get hurt regardless of the outcome of the circumstances, that would place you in a position that you've never been in before, just so that you could see what it feels like? That was my question, and that's not
You and I have had this conversation though already.
Education.
You and I have had this conversation already, and the way that a civilian would react in a situation versus a trained police officer who's been through training is vastly different. And so I think that you're trying to use it to prove a point that if I were in Maloney's position, I also would have shot Luis Gongora-Pat. And, you know, I don't know what I would have done, but I'm not a trained police officer, and I believe that his use of force caused Luis to lose his life unnecessarily.
So, with Officer Linderman, I don't even know how long ago, maybe a year or so ago, there were some homeless folks that had complained about him. And I actually went to APD and, you know, filled out a report for them, and they didn't want to come in. Of course, they were like, you know, scared to go to the police department and complain. So I did that, and about maybe 4 months later, I finally heard back from someone. And when I went in, it was kind of intimidating talking to the officer I was talking to. And he kind of did everything he could in order to get me to kind of drop everything. And I wouldn't do that, but the only thing that made me go ahead and drop that complaint was that he said that I could possibly get a meeting together, possibly with Linderman and Summers, and try to go over some different ideas that, you know, we can do to work on, you know, the issues that some of the homeless have with our officers. That never happened. But I just kind of want to ask you, have you personally gone out into these encampments and talked to the homeless community about how they feel that these particular officers that deal and interact with them on a daily basis, how they feel as though they're being treated, if they're being treated unfairly, if they're being harassed? Have you personally gone out, or are you just taking the word of the officers to say they're doing a good job at what they do?
No, I haven't gone out to the encampments. I have talked to homeless people about their interactions with law enforcement. So, yeah.
And has that been good?
Some's been good, some's been bad. And again, it's their perspective, and I value that.
I've noticed you have a really nice military police vehicle that
I'm very uncomfortable.
Pull your skirt down.
what's the maintenance like on those
Pull your skirt down.
vehicles? How many police officers do you drive that? I guess my thing would be, if it's really expensive and you guys aren't using it at all, like I understand maybe for safety, but maybe it's just for show. That's what I feel like.
That vehicle was free.
Awesome.
Okay, and the cost to maintain it is exceptionally low. We have a number of people who are trained to drive it, and it has been used on several incidents, one of which was actually used to rescue hostages from a hostage situation. So it's used under specific circumstances. It's not something that's just taken
Yes, he
out
does
for
believe himself.
service. But when there is a need, trust me, there is a need at times. That vehicle is used. It was free to us from the government, and it costs very little to maintain.
Fucking narcissist.
I was on the crime prevention commission, and so I did a lot of meetings in Rivertown and also in my neighborhood. I live by Kaiser, and something that's not been addressed here is that the people that live close to the encampments, they had their grass sprinklers stolen out of their lawns. Anything of value to be sold was taken from their houses. They also had their backyards attacked. And in some cases, like Paulus Forest and a few other, the homeless would have like fireplaces or fires to cook and warm themselves, and they would set them. You know, I don't know if it was done by accident or on purpose. And yes, I spoke to a lot of homeless because I was also on cleaning up Antioch before that. And I have just a love that I felt for the little thing at the end of F Street where you have, it's where Antioch begins, okay? That's where the original families came up out of the water. And so I used to like take care of that little spot. And you won't believe what the homeless did to that. I mean, I understand if they don't have a toilet, they might back up to it and use it, which they did, but then they also graffitied the heck out of it.
And I'll say this again, we don't discriminate on people because of their housing situation. We address behavior. And when behavior turns criminal, then obviously we have to respond.
At a traffic stop, what do you want us to do as citizens?
At a traffic stop, our biggest issue is please comply. And one of the messages that we talk about, and I've had a lot of interactions with people in our community, whether it be through barbershop forums, whether it be through a coffee with the cops, pizza with the police, or even when I went to speak at the King's Conference, which the King's Conference was an event that was put together by Rotary that invited all of the African American male students in middle school and high school. Hilda, were you a part of that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Well, I'm part of Rotary, but Sal's the person.
And Sal's there. Thank you, Sal. And I spoke with the young men there, and that was the question that they had asked. And one of the things that I often tell them, a saying that I had heard from someone else, I'm not going to take credit for it, but it's compliance. Comply now, complain later. And
Comply or die, you mean?
Comply or die. Results in some sort of use
Comply or die for some.
when there's some level of non-compliance. In a traffic stop, if you keep your hands on the wheel, if you just do what the officer says, hand over your license, registration, proof of insurance, and don't make any, furtive movements. Don't get out of the car when he tells you not to. He or she. If you just comply with the officer's directions, then everything's fine.
What if the officer told you your insurance is fake?
I wanted to ask this one question. It was something about what you said is the simulator, right? I mean, I'm a retired police officer. And one of the things I heard the chief talk about, which is a lot of PDs are doing now, offering it to the community. Chief is offering, can you walk in these shoes on a simulator? And I think that if there's some leaders here or some other people, take them up on it, because you'll start to see from a different perspective. So when you look at things that happen, you'll start to ask more questions. Could this have been avoided from the person or the officer, or was it training, or was it? Because when these things happen and shooting happens, there's a quadre of different things. It's training, it's the person, it's everything. And so I just wanted to see how many people right now would take the chief up on that. Raise your hand, I want to see. And that's good, and you should, because what it's going to do is going to cause you to talk more factual than, well, I think this happened. And I'm just only saying that because, yes, everything needs to be above board. Cops mess up, and then cops don't mess up. But it's a big paintbrush that's being painted, and you got a bunch of cops that are paying a sacrifice for the ones that screw up. And I think this also will expose what cops do, and you guys get a better appreciation of it.
Accountability. I have a response to it.
I just wanted to say, as a private citizen, I had the opportunity to do the use of force simulation at the county's facility in Concord, and it was absolutely eye-opening. We did probably 10 or 15 different simulations, and it gave you a
And they
whole
all
different
ended in lethal
perspective
force.
on how quickly things happen and things you can't even anticipate. And it was a really eye-opening experience.
No, today was just a blow for me. I'm very professional. I've been all on the news and everything with this mess. But I'm frustrated now. I've been out here having a happy coffee day, and then you open, look in the back.
Don't be a Karen then.
Because you only get paid in civil suit. The money don't make the payment that you live in. And I got sons. None of my sons have criminal records, but they wanted to my sons went to correctional officer. None of my sons have criminal records, but they wanted to. And he's fighting cases. He's not even a criminal. So I know what it is to have kids to go to college and live the American dream. You know what I'm saying? And I grew up in Mississippi, so I saw all the KKK, the prejudice and everything. I saw it all in the beginning. Worked in the cotton fields. Wow, I can't believe the second shot. You can't sugarcoat nothing around here for me.
I'm sorry. Were you just making a statement?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The Sycamore Corridor is an area that has historically been one of the higher crime areas of the city, oftentimes the highest crime area of the city. It is something that we're constantly addressing.
Good cops, because there are good cops. There's also bad cops. We can't agree. How can you
No, I'm not going to disagree with your job. That's all.
I mean, I put my stuff away. I had to play this. What happened?
We'll come back tomorrow.
Where was that?
It was in another state. So you can look it up. So his name is Police Sergeant Javier Esqueda. He was reprimanded. He is currently on administrative leave for blowing the whistle on 2 officers that killed a man recently. This happened in July. So he's 1 month into his detention. How can you make sure that good cops don't get in trouble for blowing the whistle on the ones that are doing abusive things, like these guys that they shoved a baton in the guy's mouth and they held his nose for like 72 seconds and he died. The officer that blew the whistle, he's in trouble and they're telling him that he can get. So blue lives are protecting themselves and they're reprimanding the officer that's trying to be good.
And here's all I am. How do I prevent that? Because I'm the chief, and I wouldn't let that happen.
Listen to your citizens.
It's just that simple. Okay?
He says it doesn't happen in Antioch, but it does.
No, that does not happen in Antioch. And you just made an example of something in Illinois. So what I'm telling you is, if something like that happened here, and the sergeant came forward, first of all, I would have expected that sergeant.
Ruts in Antioch.
I'm assuming that you're saying the sergeant wasn't
Knee
on
in the
scene.
neck by Brogdon.
No, there was a video. There was a video.
Okay, so he wasn't on scene to interject and intervene in what was going on. Okay. Okay. So if an officer brought forth evidence to support the fact that another officer used some sort of police brutality or excessive force, that officer would not be reprimanded. The officers who engaged in that conduct.
Brogdon, Hoffman, and Malone.
I'm sorry?
I believe it was because he wasn't allowed to leak that video, but he had something in his heart. Said that he
all
needed
of
to
them.
leak that.
They would
And that's
this
why
whole
he's getting in
police
trouble. So if
department.
somebody was to violate something and say, hey, this needs to be forward, are you going to get them in trouble? Like, where would
The information needs to come to me.
yeah.
So, and that wouldn't happen.
And she was
What?
being the officer around, she was serving her.
Of course.
In a sense, I think there's a
Just say yes.
brotherhood in any sort of profession, or, I mean, whether the military, law enforcement, anything, because we go through things that a lot of people don't ever experience, and we have to be able to have each other's back. Now,
Stop lying for each other.
What that does not mean, though, is that it would extend to someone who commits some sort of criminal act. Because if there was a police officer who committed a criminal act, that person would not be of the same caliber of the other people.
Oh my God, that's a lie.
Just using the word brotherhood means that officers cover
They do.
Yes, they do.
They absolutely do.
And I'm just going to speak here locally. I'm not going to talk about Illinois or these.
No,
It happens here too.
They do in Antioch.
And you have your opinion.
That's not an opinion, that's a
My
fact.
son was a victim.
Folks are traumatized. They're
Yeah, I know you want to talk to me on the side because you don't want the truth to come
You're
out.
so dismissive, it's
My son was a
disgusting.
victim, the knee in the neck by Officer Brogdon. 2 years later, Brogdon did the same thing to Rakeem and he killed him here in Antioch, knee in the neck. Tell the truth. It's happening here in Antioch. Stop covering stuff, because when you go home, you can live with your family in peace. When we go home, we got to deal with the people who've been murdered and suffered here and been victimized and brutalized here every day.
No, you don't.
I heard you touch on the Sycamore area a little bit, and I know I remember you saying something about you kind of live there or something, right? And so my question is, I know like with the homeless, you guys have, the resources such as CORE, and you kind of guide them that way. What else? We focus on crime in these areas, but I think people should understand that that some of the people that live in those areas are also have the same fear that people that live outside, because they're living right next door to the drug dealers and to the people that are murdering folks. So I just wanted to make that clear that not all people in these areas are bad folks. So what
Actually,
are you?
I'll stop you right there and say the majority of people who live out there are great folks.
Right.
Who do not want that criminal element out in front of their house. I agree
Right,
with that.
yeah. So I definitely think we need to focus
We know
on
that.
crime in that area, but I'm trying to figure out what resources are you guys offering? Are there any resources you're offering them, like you're doing like with CORE, when it comes to, job training or some type of job, something that can make their lives a little bit better? How are you engaging them, and even the kids that are in that area?
Well, the police department doesn't have those resources, but we talk to people and offer additional resources available through the county. The police department doesn't have a job training program or something to offer people as far as that's concerned.
Do you guys go in there though and kind of engage and talk to the community? A lot of people have fear about police officers.
All the time. Just had, Genesis Church out there, Pastor Damon, Chantel, communicate with them on a regular basis. They had a, pre-COVID, but they had a celebration out at Contra Loma Estates Park. I went to that, interacted with people, talked with people in the community, and yes, I did. When I moved to Antioch, I lived on Sycamore and I lived on Dogwood. So I am familiar with that particular area.
You grew up in the hood, right?
I'm just going to talk about what the gentleman right here, and I'm sorry I didn't get his name. We have an ongoing issue. You know where the two churches are at the top of the rail? The two churches at the top of the rail. Okay. It hasn't happened in a while, but just the other night, 10:30, 3 rounds, boom, boom, boom. So previous to that, we had an incident where, and it was automatic fire. I mean, I know the difference between automatic and just pulling the trigger as fast as you can. And then before that, we had another incident where they had several gunshots. It's good because they're all blanks. But the fact remains is that it's happening up there. They'll come up in there in that parking lot and they'll run 20, 30 rounds. In fact, we found 30 rounds on the ground. So 9mm,
Hey, pretty face.
green tip, we all know what they are.
How you doing?
We talked to the churches to possibly put a chain across that
I
open
gotta give you some something.
with locks, whoever needs it. And
When
how
I get
can
cold,
we
I
get
get
the
you
involved?
infected
Because
like
you
little
guys were up
kids.
there collecting shells or casing at least the first one, and it continues to happen.
Well,
One of these days, it's not going to be blanks.
on the private property, the police department wouldn't have the ability to force them to do that.
No.
We'd be more than happy to talk with them though and let them know the resources that are being used responding to those calls.
I think it's appropriate that it's happening way too frequently.
Well, you take this time to go talk to some of them. We will pay me to get a conversation with them.
Are you aware there's one comment in particular by Nicole Dana White. I don't know if she works for you guys or if she's starting your Facebook page. Who that woman is, I'd like to meet her. But rip that shit out and make her
Through exit protesters,
yes, to protest.
threw bottles at them.
Well, and this kind of behavior, it's
Right outside your police department.
upsetting, it's scary, but to see that this woman is so associated with the organization it's tough to
Nicole does not work for the police department, nor does she have anything to do with our social media page.
One more.
Right away, we'll go to accountability.
Oh, Manny.
Hi. First of all, thanks for putting this on today. I think this is good to give people a chance to talk to you directly. I actually wanted to ask you about something a little bit different. Canine units. Is there always a canine unit associated with each beat, and or throughout the 24-hour period? Is there always one dog unit involved, and are you looking to bring more of those on board or online?
So we actually have 6 canine units, teams, officer and canine, and we generally put one on each crew. So there are 6 crews that work 7 days a week. 3 of them, day shift, swing shift, graveyard, work one half of the week, and then there's a day shift, swing shift, graveyard on the other half of the week. And when we do our shift signups, the canine officers are placed on each one of those crews. So the goal is to have a canine officer on the streets 24 hours a day. Now, sometimes because of training and vacation, that doesn't always happen. But if everybody was working that particular day, then yes, there would be a canine on the street 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So I just wanted to respond to the retired Oakland police officer and you as well. You guys, mentioned. Sorry. You guys mentioned about this whole stimulation where you go through what a police officer goes through, and we're not saying that it's easy being a police officer. It's not. You guys do go through a lot, but it's the matter of the fact is, power changes people. And I hope you guys are aware of the Stanford prison experiment. And the fact is there have been so many experiences from AP people in our community who have experienced police officers being disrespectful, having their gun or their hand on their gun right when they get on the scene. They are very they're aggressive. They're just not. There's situations where they're just not humanizing, and it's like we as the community members don't feel safe by APD officers, and it's like there's no accountability. When people report police officers, there's no follow-up, there's no trying to get accountability. And the fact is like we feel as if like, for example, I remember when there were 3 people who came up talking about sexual harassment, and there were officers, including you, saying sexual harassment is not a crime. And sexual harassment is it's very defiant, and there are times where people have experiences where, you know, they come into encounters with officers of the Antioch police, and there's just no training whatsoever where there's appropriate conversations and appropriate accountability when there are reports that go to APD. So my question to you is, how do you hold your officers accountable when there are reports of use of excessive force, when there are reports of officers with not just one but multiple uses of excessive force? What do you do when your police union has comments made on social media saying that he 100% supports slapping protesters in the face?
The one comment that you're talking about on social media, you and I have already had the conversation. That officer was disciplined for that matter. As far as accountability, actually, let me back up and say that one thing. When we talk about dehumanizing, I think there's a lot of people who want to dehumanize the police officers and recognize that our
can't turn it around.
As a job.
Don't turn it around, please.
Hang on a second. I heard her out. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to tell you that I fully know in my heart we have great police officers who work here, who are human beings, who are husbands, wives, daughters, sons,
Citizens are too.
fathers.
Innocent citizens are too.
Understood. And our police officers are the best. And
No,
I'm
they're
telling you
not.
right now,
No, they're
you have
not.
your opinion, and should you
Because
have
we've
your
been
opinion,
victims of your police officers.
that there are people who do not
If you
share
speak
your
the
same-
truth, then it'll be better. Just speak the
Answer your
truth.
question, Catherine.
Just because they don't share opinions
I understand
of
that.
mine.
What I'm
No, but
saying
they
is-
cover things
Because
up.
we're not,
That's what they
it's the
do.
thing is we're not anti-police, we're just pro-accountability. We want to see accountability.
So to answer
When there's
your question
reports of
about
excessive force,
accountability-
when there's reports of police officers killing innocent...
To answer your
Don't interrupt
What?
her.
I literally, this is a
Hang on
coffee with the
second. No, it
cops.
is. To answer your question about accountability, I'll say this. Just because someone makes an allegation of misconduct does not make it true. The investigation has to be investigated, has to be vetted out. Officers are entitled to their due process, just like Maloney. And if through the process it is determined the officer did not engage in misconduct, despite what you say, there's not going to be discipline for that. However, if it does demonstrate that there was misconduct, then the officer is going to be held accountable for it. Okay?
Is that
You cannot have
investigation
false
done?
allegations result in some form of discipline or an allegation that can't be proven. So they are entitled to due process.
Well, when an
just like
officer makes
anybody
false
in our
allegations on citizens that have becoming
Is that
criminals,
investigation?
who handles
Is that
that? Is they
investigation on
acquitted of all
Maloney
charges?
over?
That means
And
the
does the
officer
council
lied,
know
right?
about the?
I mentioned that earlier.
You're not punishing your officers.
But it's the
Covering
police
it up.
policing the police. It's not...
And it's affecting people's lives every day.
I wanted to share an experience before I left because we've had all these talks about police interactions. I live right up by Kaiser Hospital there since 1996. About 3.5 years ago, my mom's 70 years old. She has schizophrenia. About 7 years ago, she tried to kill herself. She overdosed on medication. And I called 911. And I was on with APD dispatch. I told them the situation. The first officer arrived in under a minute. Immediately ran in the house, up the stairs, to the second story master bedroom. Didn't look around the house. I'm not speaking to his techniques or anything, but knew the situation that he was driving to. Immediately ran into the room. My mom said something. Got on his radio. Another officer, I was outside waiting for a fire. Another officer came tearing down Stanford with the defibrillator. Luckily, she still had a pulse. She was completely out of it. And same thing, went tearing upstairs. We talk about simulators, situations that people deal with on a daily basis. We talk about all the negative things that police deal with. And like the chief said when he first started talking, the majority of these officers join the department for moments like that. Non-police activities. Moments where they're helping somebody.
Oh, shit.
My mom luckily is alive today. And I credit a bit of
My
that.
cousin is dead. By the Antioch, he was putting up in college because he had a mental breakdown. They killed Raheem Russ.
And transparency. My parents have always been against me smoking.
His testimony is bullshit.
So, since I'm staying at my parents' house to be respectful, no, hold on. Staying at my parents' house to be respectful. I drove down the street to the medical building right there, off Deer Valley, next to Antioch Veterinary Hospital, like Deer Valley High School. And I was sitting in their parking lot smoking weed. Whether that's right or wrong, that's what I was doing. APD rolled through the parking lot. I don't know whether they were called or they're just coming through doing a check. The officer was like, hey man, you really shouldn't be doing that here. You gotta go.
If you were black, it would
Really?
be different.
No, hold on.
No, if you were black, it would be different.
Hold on.
It's relevant though.
The crazy part is that same officer that was telling me how to go from smoking weed was that same officer that a year before had helped to save my mother's life. And I had a chance to thank that officer. And we all know that white privilege exists in this world.
Yes, it is.
But I'll be damned if I stand here in my community, in the city where I grew up, and the people I surround myself with, and these people here, and judge each and every one of them when they're out here risking their lives, when they're running up into a 2-story building. Okay? Because I know what does happen. I work security in San Jose, and I'm not going to steal the floor here, but I work security in San Jose, and I was on Center Road the day that the officer responded out to a mental health call and stepped out of his car and was shot in the head from a gentleman up on the 2nd-story floor. And he probably didn't even have a chance to see the person who killed him. And what that officer was responding out to was a mental health call to help the other people there and to help that person. So let's think about all these things before we talk about each and every circumstance, because we all have negative interactions with people. I've had negative interactions with my parents.
How the fuck is this relevant?
So sit down and talk to these people. Do not just...
Is that not what we're doing?
And that's all I want to say. And I want to say thank you.
I am a person that believes in resolution. I like to think of myself as a fixer. And I hear you guys talking back there. This is my first time hearing some of the concerns that you guys have. But my question to you, Chief, is how do we help these people, solve whatever issues that they have? Some of them talk about family members that have been, things happen to them. We can't change what has happened, but we have to be able as a community bridge this gap between law enforcement and community and come up with some sort of solution to kind of bring an end to this, because it looks like you've had quite a bit of interaction with these people in the past.
Yep.
So
Sleeping outside of
we have to
APD.
figure out how to resolve
Private
it.
residence.
What do we
They
do
wish they didn't have.
that both sides are happy with the outcome, or sometimes we have to just say this is what it is, and there's no more we can do about it, and that be it.
Hold on.
But if they're constantly everywhere you're at, and you are really getting your message across to what it is that you guys are doing and what your plans for the city is, and we spend a lot of time talking, you're addressing your issues, I don't know what's happening. I just really believe that we have to come to some resolution. We got to come to the meeting of the minds and just say, hey, this is what it is. This is what happened. Right or wrong, this is what happened. Let's fix it and let's come to a solution and move on. I don't know what each one of those ladies' argument is, but I see they're very strong about it, and let's just maybe come to a round table and have each one meet with them separately
and come up with something that, rather than bring to the solution of what the outcome is, well, we gotta stop this, because, you know, it's gonna get worse.
Period. No shit. It's gonna get bad.
Guaranteed.
And I have nothing against you ladies speaking up about issues that concern you. That's what you should do.
Period.
But you gotta come to some point where you get a resolution. It's gotta be fixed.
Fire killer cops.
That's a great statement. And I will say that Lacey and Shagufa and McKenna and I, along with Michael, I believe, we met, myself, and some of my captains met with them. And when we left, I had made the offer to them, and we mentioned this before, that if they wanted to sit down and have a conversation with me, I'd be more than willing to do that. I agree with you. That offer still stands with you guys. You guys want to come and talk to me, and Shagufa, you had mentioned that you were actually going to get some stuff together and you were going to reach out to me. I assume you will. More than happy to have those conversations.
What is your date, your calendar date? What is your date and time? You have to get back to the office and check your calendar?
No. She said she was going to reach out to me when they were ready to talk.
No, I'm saying for you and I, we have different issues.
I'll talk with you in a minute, and I'll talk with you offline, because I don't want to take away
Right.
from
No, we
the
don't.
broader
We don't.
discussion.
Right.
I want to
I
sit
just
down
want
and
the
have a
broader
broad discussion, but I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that as well.
Definitely had my hand up.
I definitely have been had my hat up.
Can y'all acknowledge that I've had my hand up this whole time?
I want to share my experience.
No.
Right along I was right along with Oscar Mack, and he actually pulled over, I think about three vehicles. And two of them had black drivers. And one of them was actually speeding on Dover. Registration, everything, and he let the driver go with a warning. And the driver was calm, following instructions and everything. And he let the driver go. The driver was only going a couple miles over the speed limit. And then the next vehicle that was pulled over had.
I'm going to pan for you, Tamisha. I don't know how many people are here. There's a few people behind me, too.
He pulled over a Caucasian driver, and a van driver got him. And after that, he's also a lateral transfer from LAPD. Something about a vehicle in the Walmart parking lot. I didn't reach out. He told the license.
Yeah, years ago, yeah. But they don't lie. That's what they do. They pay out, and then the cases are dismissed like they never did nothing. So when you take them to college, correcting a mistake with these other workers, I've learned that you don't do it either. These people, I really don't know about these people. They're just like criminal cases. That's degrading. The mentally ill behind all this shit, because they have the EMT treat them with the medicine. They did a bunch of stuff to him.
You're okay.
My apologies.
They just want license, registration, and insurance. Their demeanor, confrontation at some point. Instead of being cordial and nice and not be so offensive or I sometimes feel as though they
have like an ad, like couch.
Yeah,
You know?
they do.
Instead of having 3 or 4 cop cars at the same time,
Right,
to handle just one person.
right.
Why 3 or 4 cops?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like, am I being treated like a criminal because I was being pulled over for speeding?
And I can't answer. And you mentioned a few different agencies. I don't know what time of day you're talking or what the circumstances are. Each one is going to be.
Y'all arms gonna fall off. But they get theirs written off though. They privileged. Officers are privileged.
How many times do my plates have to get ran for
Right.
going down from
Not a whole bunch of times.
Deer
Okay, so all right.
fucking intersection?
You had me going
You
there
got
for a
questions
second.
out here?
Yes, sir. Then you. Oh, I'm sorry.
My pay is for one reason, and that reason is I get up in the morning and the first thing I do is I open up Facebook.
Oh,
And there's so posted stuff for the day. That makes my day. Out there, driving off the road, whatever traffic pops out there, I literally make my day. I give them where I want them to be. They even sent me a message about the tickets. How's that, Sherry? I was jumping up and down in my backyard because I was finding something that was out of reach and my respect I couldn't grow.
He's such an asshole.
And I just think every one of them are doing it.
I talked earlier about the recent addition to our traffic page on our website. Want to give credit. Sergeant Ted Chang, I told you guys the sergeant was responsible for that. Sergeant Ted Chang was the one who put that together. So. Thank you, Chief. Hang on one second. I'll give her a question.
So I think Shagupa kind of touched on this a little bit, but mentioning the interaction we had with you. We had a discussion because an issue that occurred was that sexual harassment was occurring. And I had talked to you, in the meeting we discussed the fact that I was a survivor of sexual violence and I was being sexually harassed, and one of your officers made a comment that was extremely dismissive and disrespectful and was like, well, maybe the reason you're getting harassed is because you guys are out here. Which is very similar to, if any of you are familiar with the concept of rape culture, which is blaming victims for the violence that occurs to them, which is extremely traumatizing, upsetting, inappropriate. And in that conversation, I had explained that issue, and the other officer, I believe, had mentioned emotional intelligence. And in that same conversation, after I had just talked about that, you made the comment, well, sexual harassment is not a crime. Which is an extremely emotionally unintelligent thing to say to someone who is a survivor of that violence. So my issue is that you say emotional intelligence is needed in your police force, but I don't even believe that you have it. Once again, it's proven by the way that you interact with Catherine. The lack of empathy, the lack of sympathy. You're just standing there. You know my father. Many of you may probably don't. He was a politician. He was a district attorney for a while. So I've been around politicians all my life, and that's what I see before me right now. Someone who lacks empathy, who lacks sympathy, and who doesn't have the emotional intelligence that you claim is in your police force. And that is the issue, because you keep telling people that you're checking back for these officers, but I don't think you can, and I don't think you have an interest in actually doing that. And if there's not systems in place that also do that, it won't happen, because we can't just rely on you, because I don't trust you. A lot of people don't trust you. It's very inappropriate that you're telling these people that it's all on you and you have this character, but I have not seen that in my interactions with you. And if you don't know how the basic ways of interacting with people who have been traumatized and been victims of violence by the hands of your officers, you're not going to be able to serve accountability that creates the justice, that creates the healing in order to better your own community. Because the issue, no, I'm not done, because the issue is that legality does not equal morality. And that's what everybody here seems to forget, is just because you're following the law or you're enforcing the law does not mean you are enforcing moral codes or things that promote moral well-being of the community. If the laws are unjust, you are acting unjustly. And the laws are unjust, and your behavior is unjust, and it's not providing healing for the community. You're re-traumatizing folks. This event is triggering for a lot of folks. And the way that you interact and the way that you treat folks is really, really inappropriate. And that's the issue.
And take tax dollars money and pay the victims after the police beat them. Who's wrong? Something is not right here.
Before I begin, your response to that is okay? Just to clarify?
I heard her.
Okay.
Proving my point. Thank you. No empathy. No sympathy.
So,
we're not talking to you. You're not the police. We're not talking to you. You tried to say something to me over here. We're not talking to you. But we're not. You can have a side conversation with me like earlier. You haven't been a victim of police brutality, so you don't understand the feeling.
Kathy.
You don't understand if you haven't been a victim.
I'm awake.
My son go to college. My son was going to take his second test to be a correctional officer before Antioch PD snatched him out of my car and beat him.
I know, but I don't think she meant it like that.
No, but she was been talking to me crazy over here all day.
I don't think she meant it like that. I think she was actually trying to
give us nothing.
She was
That's
just
the point. Quit your job. This whole system is corrupt.
What your approach is with homelessness when you do go out.
Did you not have the next question?
I definitely did.
As the police, not as a social service agency, but I understand that you offer services, you try to direct them.
We do. And from a law enforcement capacity, that's really the extent of what we could do other than...
There's something that's funny.
Stop.
We're not talking about...
I want to know.
Stop. McKenna, there's not. We address the criminal aspect of it. So if someone commits a crime, again, their housing status is really irrelevant at that point. But if they commit a crime, we have to address the criminal aspect of it. But we do what we can to work with the resources outside to provide those other things.
Chief, what was
Lacey.
the question? Sorry.
The question had to do with what the police department does relating to homelessness and outreach stuff, and I explained that we don't. We deal with the criminal aspect of it, and then try and provide resources outside for the other things. Lacey.
So my comment, I actually had my hand raised before the gentleman over here started talking about his interaction with his mother and everything. So I had a statement to make that piggybacked off of what Shagufa and McKenna were saying. And it goes to what you were saying as well, ma'am. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Saying, there has to be some kind of bridge that's created, right? And when you said that, we have to put an end to this, you motioned over here. But what I'm saying is we have to put an end to this. And what I will elaborate on that, because what we're talking about here is accountability, right? But, and in your eyes, that's legal accountability or disciplinary accountability within the department. But accountability and lack thereof in the Antioch Police Department starts with you and your words, Chief Brooks. Because when you respond to things like what Shagufa said, she's expressing concerns, and you respond with, well, I think that the dehumanizing happens to the police officers, and you don't address what she's talking about. Or you say, when someone brings up an example from another city, and say, well, I can't control, anything that goes on in another city. That's the emotional intelligence that we're talking about. Those are completely valid points that you frequently dismiss, and you're very smooth in your talking, and you're very good at going around an issue, but you don't actually address things. And so when we sat for 2.5 hours with you, you smiled and you smirked and you laughed with your captains at the things that we were trying to express to you, because obviously we felt so passionately about something that we were out there for a long time, as you know, doing something very extreme, and your responses are so dismissive, and your officers see that. And so, for example, with Lenderman, we've made a lot of complaints about Lenderman. So when we're interacting with him and he's being absolutely insane, and we say, you know what, it's okay, we're not going to argue with you, we're just going to put in a complaint, he smiles at us and he says, go ahead, you go ahead, because he knows that accountability is not going to be there, because he hears the words that you say, he sees the way that you interact with people who disagree with the police department. You smile and you make little hop arounds of what we're actually saying, and you don't actually ever hold your officers accountable in those conversations. You say, Antioch Police has the best police officers. How is that a response to someone saying that they have personal interactions with your officers that are dehumanizing, that are...
With you, that are dehumanizing.
Yes, and you do it the same, and you do it the best, Tammany, honestly. And they take after you, and they're leading by example, and the example that they're getting is not holding them accountable. It's giving them excuses to continue acting the ways that they're acting. And I know that there's a lot of things that you might not be aware of, but we talked a lot about the fears that come along with trying to make a complaint about an officer, and those are completely valid fears. There are a lot of things that the Antioch Police do, maybe behind your back, maybe not, I can't speculate on that are horrifying. And that's why we're here. We're not here because we just hate police officers and want to waste our days standing around outside of Starbucks. We're here because people of the community come to us and they share their experiences with us. And we're trying to find a way to make that bridge that you're talking about, because we are out here, we're doing the work, but we don't feel the work is being put in back. We don't feel it's reciprocated, because when Chief Tammany Brooks doesn't believe that his friend Mike did anything wrong, then there's not going to be any accountability, no matter how that report comes back on Maloney. When thousands of people are out here saying, we know the facts of the case, we understand what happened, we understand that the lethal force was justified, but it was the escalation of force that led to Luis's death. When there's thousands of people saying they don't feel comfortable with Maloney, you saying, well, he was cleared by the district attorney, so that's that next question. That's not conducive to a community interaction. We pay you. You work in our community, and we pay the taxes that pay the salaries that are 130% higher than the national average for an Antioch police officer. So we feel that if thousands of people are coming forward and saying, we don't feel comfortable with Maloney, maybe you should step out of your personal relationship with him and say, maybe there's something wrong here. Maybe even if the district attorney cleared him of any criminal wrongdoing, maybe I need to reevaluate this situation. I know that I'm friends with him. I know that I've known him for a long time, but maybe they have a point. Maybe I should take another perspective and look at this. Because Luis Gongora Pat did not need to die, Tammany. And it was Maloney's actions wholeheartedly that cost him his life.
And you said a lot. And I'll just say one thing. First of all, emotion doesn't play into this. So friendship or nothing, you talk about emotion or friendship or those decisions, my decisions are based on fact. The other thing I want to talk
I think
about,
maybe that's the problem.
The other thing is, when I talk about not having control over what happens in Illinois or somewhere else, it's not trying to be dismissive. It's just trying to put some context into, as the chief of Antioch, I'm going to address the things that happen within our community. Okay?
But you can use it as a bridge to talk about things that happen in Antioch.
We're holding the same systems.
Okay.
I'm proving my point.
I've been in this community for 25 years, and I've been a cop in Oakland PD for 30 years, and I'm retired since 2011, and I've been around this police department, know some of these guys and what have you. And
I'm hungry. I know, maybe
one of the things that we're very lucky to do, which bothers me, is first of all, I understand people have personal issues. First of all, he shouldn't be sat up here to deal with one personal issue. That should be something that should be done in private. Because most chiefs, I tell you, most chiefs would not sit here and do this. We're lucky to have him and the department out here. Yes, we're lucky.
That's the bare minimum of what they should do. That's a testament to how shitty police officers are. That's not a testament to anything.
You talk, let me talk. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Granted, police departments all over the world, they're doing wrong stuff and they're doing right stuff. But you sit here to these men and women in blue that basically all heard is they're all screw-ups, and they're not all screw-ups.
Nobody said that, though. Nobody said that.
No, but I'm just saying some of the things I hear, it just really bothers me because I'm a citizen now. I pay taxes.
Right.
You know, when it's wrong, it's wrong. I understand that. But here's the thing: what we don't see is he's a younger chief more than most of the crusty older chiefs. So he's about innovation. He's about getting people that look like us to work here: white, black, Hispanic, Asian, female, and females too. And basically, I can see he's breaking down the barriers of the good old boys club. Because trust me, I come from a good old boys club, and it ain't fun to work there. And trust me, I'm an African American working in a good old boys club in a big city. That's a hard thing to do. I came on in '81. Yeah, I'm 63. Came on in '81, back when the Panthers were very active. So you can imagine how it was being not a large African American population in Oakland. So when I look at this is a damn good job. I look at before, it wasn't a damn good job. So all I'm saying is we have gripes and bitches. Some of those things, excuse me for using that word, some of those things are in private because it bothered me that we're sitting here roasting this man, and that's a bunch of crap. Talk about what's affecting the community, not a personal roast.
We are the community.
This is the only place we
understand your pain, man, but that should be done with him in private. I don't
No.
He never did
Why?
it. He never did it.
He never did. Why? That's what's happening in the community too. The good stuff you talk about and the bad.
Anyway, one of the reasons if he said I'm not coming back would be because of you. I don't
Good.
hear what
Because
you
of
want to
me.
do. Roast him by yourself.
Because of
not
me.
in front of us.
Hold on.
That's absurd.
You need to tell the truth about victims too.
Our time is ending here. We only have 2 hours.
It's not always good. It's not always bad.
Thank
but
you.
hey.
But so here's what I'll say. I've worked for this police department since 1995. I think I mentioned that earlier. I am accessible. I am out in the community. I am not afraid of difficult conversations, and I'm not
But you
going
don't
anywhere.
respond to them.
Yes.
Okay. So, while Mark said he would understand if I don't come back out here, I'm here to tell you I will be back out here. If we have another one, I will be out here, and I will still have these conversations with people. Okay, whether you agree, whether you disagree, it's okay. I mean, this is the United States of America, and we have the ability to do that. Okay, we as police officers protected your rights to sit out there and protest. Okay, we did. So, with that said, I will say this.
You're gonna protect.
This community means the world to me. And we are going to continue working hard to build relationships, to establish trust, and to make our community safer. I am proud and honored to be your police chief. I thank you guys very much for coming out here today. I'm sure there will be further discussions that we will have with various people. I tell you guys this all the time. I do live here in town. If you guys see me out in the stores or something, I'm off duty. I don't mind if you come up and talk to me. Say hi, you want to talk about stuff. I'm used to it by now, trust me. So, thank you again for coming out. I appreciate all of people's comments and opinions.
But only respond to some.
I look forward to doing this again in the future. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Sorry.